Kyle Clifford, the Crossbow cannibal, who was one of the UK's most dangerous criminals, or he was, because he is now in prison serving 3 whole life sentences. Now, he is the only prisoner in the whole of the UK to be serving 3 whole life sentences. Now, there was one of the inmates who was serving 2 whole life sentences, who was, as we all know, as Levi Belfield. That absolute wrong'un was serving a whole life sentence. Then when he was convicted on a further murder of Millie Dowler, he was given a second whole life order, meaning he will never be released from prison. Now, this absolute wrong'un, Kyle Clifford, who is, I'll add him to the screen there. Now, Kyle Clifford became the subject of a major UK national attention after the July 2024 murders of 3 women connected to racing commentator John Hunt. Now, Kyle Clifford was dating or going out with Louise Hunt for about 18 months when they split up, and when they split up, she didn't think anything of it until she became his victim. So the victims in the case were Louise's mother, who was Carol Hunt, who was 61-year-old. Louise Hunt was only 25-year-old herself, and Hannah Hunt, who was the sister of Louise, was 28-year-old. He is an absolute horrid human being. Now, people, I am going to try my best not to swear in these videos, because when I swear, I've noticed that the algorithm is not getting hit as much. So I will try and keep these videos more professional, even though when I'm talking about these wrong'uns, because this absolute wrong'un, notice I said absolute twice because I'm holding myself back, people. But he is an absolute you-know-what. He is a rapist, because as Louise was dying, he actually got on top and done the worst of the worst deeds to her. And I will talk a bit about that later on when I speak about the actual murders. So he'd actually been in a relationship with Louise Hunt, like I mentioned, and reports presented during court proceedings indicated that the relationship had ended prior to the murders, and prosecutors described Clifford as harboring resentment and obsessive anger following the breakup. So the attack, which happened on the 9th of July 2024, he went to the Hunt family home. I'll refer to it as the Hunt family home because this was their home, rather than saying Carol's home or Carol and John. That's how I will refer to it, people. Now, I'm going to add the pictures of these 3 ladies to the stage who were brutally murdered by this absolute despicable wrong'un. And like I say, that's putting it in the best way possible. But I'll just have a brief talk about who these 3 ladies were. The victims were Carol Hunt, aged 61, and her 2 daughters, Hannah Hunt, aged 28, and Louise Hunt, 25. Hannah was a beautician, and Louise was a dog groomer. And like I've mentioned, the father, John Hunt, Carol's husband and father to Hannah, and Louise, was a racing commentator for the BBC. And they also had another daughter who was Amy. And the police had no previous contact with the family prior to these murders. So according to the information given to the coroner's inquest, Carol died from stab wounds, while Hannah and Louise died from being shot with a crossbow, hence the reason he had the infamous nickname, or the infamous nickname for the murders, the Crossbow Killings. Hannah was still alive, found in the main doorway when the police arrived at the address. So I'm going to refer back to this absolute wrong'un. Kyle Marcus Clifford, who was born on April 5th, 1998. He was 26 years old at the time of the murders. He is a former security guard and briefly served as a soldier, served in the Queen's Dragoon Guards, and after being found guilty on the 10th of July, he was taken to a nearby hospital. This was after the murders because he tried to do away with himself. He did try to hang himself. He had a noose, and obviously the noose on the branch where he tried to do this gave way. And I will talk a little bit about it. But when he was apprehended, he actually took the crossbow and tried to take his own life with it. But karma works in mysterious ways. He did not die. He was paralyzed from the chest down. And he was kept under police guard at the hospital, but was unfit to be arrested due to his injuries after he shot himself in the chest. So I'm just going to put back up on screen there. I will put Louise on full screen there. And I'm going to talk about these murders. And obviously there might be a little bit of a repeat what I've just spoke about, but I'm going to tell you in detail what actually happened and when this was again. So on the 9th of July, 2024, when the attack happened, 3 members of the Hunt family, Parole Hunt and her 2 daughters, Hannah and Louise, were killed in their home in Bushey, Hertfordshire, by Louise's ex-boyfriend, Kyle Clifford. The subsequent manhunt lasted until the next day, ending when Clifford was found injured near his home in London Borough of Enfield. For the murders, Clifford was given whole life sentences on the 11th of March 2025. Actually take this to trial, believe it or not. And I will get into that a little bit later, the reasons why he took it to trial and the subsequent outcome of that trial. So Louise Hunt had broken up with Kyle Clifford on the 26th of June 2024 due to his views and behaviour. But to Louise, Clifford appeared to accept this. But over the next few days, however, he purchased a Horizon cornered MXT 405 compound crossbow and 6 bolts. He also purchased a butcher's knife, a CO2 Glock air pistol, which didn't actually arrive in the delivery before the attacks, as well as large quantities of petrol, duct tape, and rope. So Clifford parked on a street near Hunt's family home at 19 Ashland Close in Bushey near Watford. And by 1:30 p.m. on the 9th of July 2024, he left the car to check which vehicles were in the Hunt's family driveway before returning to his vehicle, where he searched online for horse racing events to see whether or not John was working that day. And because, like I've said, he's a racing commentator, and check to see if he was commentating. That would mean he wasn't at the family home, so he could carry out these attacks. So Clifford approached the Hunt's house with his knife concealed in a rucksack and rang the doorbell at 2:30 p.m. At the door, he was met by Louise's mother, Carol. Clifford told Carol that he was returning some of Louise's belongings before stabbing her to death once he was let inside the house. The discussion on the doorstep was captured by the Hunt's family doorbell camera, which also captured sound throughout the day of what unfolded on that horrific and tragic day. Clifford likely waited for Carol to die of her wounds before he left the property at 3 p.m., returning to his car and retrieving the crossbow, which he took to the house concealed under a blanket. Louise was working at her dog grooming business on an outside building, on the outside of the property. with customers coming and going during the afternoon through a side gate. Clifford waited for Louise to enter the house, which she did at 4 p.m. Shortly afterwards, she was heard screaming. Further sounds described as high-pitched screaming, a male shouting, and banging noises were heard until 4:25 p.m. Clifford then restrained Louise by the wrists and ankles and gagged her for several hours. And over those hours, Clifford harmed and raped Louise. And at 5:30 p.m., Clifford went to the outbuilding to take Louise's phone. He used it to ask John when he would return home, and then searched online if unplugging his smoke detector fully disconnected it, as he was allegedly planning to burn down the house. He left the property and went to the back garden, returning to the house at 6:20 p.m., at which point he closed the patio blinds. And at 7 p.m., Hannah Hunt, Louise's older sister, called Carol's phone as she was approaching their property. 1 minute later, Clifford fatally shot his ex-partner Louise through the head with the crossbow. Hannah entered the property mere seconds after he'd done this and called out to her mother, asking why she had not answered the phone before going upstairs. Shortly afterwards, Hannah saw Clifford and began shouting at him. Clifford tried to calm her down before Hannah began crying and screaming. At 6:50 p.m., Hannah managed to message her boyfriend, Alex Klein, asking him to call the police and telling him that Clifford was tying her up before her phone was set to silent. Clifford then shot Hannah with the crossbow at 6:55 p.m. He left the house immediately afterwards with the crossbow, again concealed under the blanket. And based on audio recordings, Hannah likely discovered the bodies of her mother and sister at 6:57 p.m. after she had been shot and wounded by Clifford. So as she was dying from that fatal blow which she received, she discovered her mother and sister, and that was the last thing she seen before she actually died from those injuries. She managed to call 999 before Clifford fled. Armed police were sent to the house just before 7 p.m. with ambulance staff in attendance. Hannah was actually still alive when the first responder arrived, but was soon pronounced dead at the scene. That gruesome scene that those responders must have came across, all three women were laying in the house dead. The police appealed for the public's help in locating Clifford. The manhunt was underway, warning that he was considered armed and dangerous and to call 999 rather than approach him. After leaving the Hunt's home, Clifford began driving towards his own house. He stopped at a lay-by in Ferny Hill before parking up at Cook's Hall Road at 7:30 p.m. and going into a nearby Lavender Hill Cemetery. He spent the night there, and that was where at some point during that night, he tied a noose around his neck and put it onto a branch, and the weakness of both the branch and the noose meant the attempt had actually failed. And following a 22-hour manhunt, mostly in the London borough of Enfield, police found Clifford in the cemetery near the home in Enfield at 7 p.m. on July the 10th, 2024, the next year. He shot himself in the chest when he saw armed police, thinking, I don't want to go to prison. I'm going to end my life. So he turned the fucking crossbow, sorry for that language, turned the crossbow on himself and was initially treated for his injuries at the cemetery before being taken to the Royal London Hospital, where he spent a considerable amount of time and was paralyzed from the chest down. Karma for what he done to those three defenseless ladies. So he actually, like I've just said, he took this case to trial. And the reason he took it to trial, because I was thinking to myself, how come you've took this case to trial. But he didn't actually get charged until September 2024, where he was charged with 3 counts of murder, false imprisonment, possession of offensive weapon, and the rape against Louise. So the reason why it took that long, because the offences happened in July, and I was thinking to myself, how come it's took so long to get to trial? And the reason being was because of his injuries, and he was in hospital for a considerable amount of time. He was unfit to be questioned, but when he was fit enough, that's when he was charged. He pleaded not guilty to murder and related charges in December 2024, but in January 2025, when he realized that there was no way out of these murders, there was no way he could ever get a not guilty, and he put his hands up and pleaded guilty to murder, false imprisonment, and weapons charges. But he denied the rape charge, so a trial was required specifically on that allegation. And in March 2025, a jury found him guilty of the rape, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment for all 3 murders. Life without parole. And each and every murder was life without parole. And that was why I was saying he is the only person ever to be given a life sentence without the possibility of parole on 3 occasions. So I'm going to add back to stage. I'll tell you what, sorry, people. I'm going to put up the judge's sentencing remarks, the judge's sentencing of this case.
Concurrent. For the possession of an offensive weapon, the knife, 1 year's imprisonment concurrent. For the murder of Carol Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order, the early release provisions are not to apply. For the false imprisonment of Louise Hunt, 8 years imprisonment concurrent. For the rape of Louise Hunt, 20 years imprisonment concurrent. For the murder of Louise Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. For the murder of Hannah Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply.
Bravo, well done. That's exactly what he deserves. But a lot of people might say he deserved the death sentence if they did dish it out in the UK. But guess what is actually worse than that? He has to spend the rest of his days inside of prison, bound and stuck to a wheelchair, not being able to walk, not being able to move, and feeling like he is now become the prey. He, just because he's in a wheelchair, do not think for one moment he will not be attacked. Prison justice will prevail on him, Mr. Kyle Clifford, if that's what we can call him. We can't even class him as a Mr. Despicable Kyle Clifford will succumb to prison justice, because when he's on the VP wings, surrounded by, yes, they become vulnerable prisoners inside of prison because they will be attacked from the normal location lads if they ever came across them. So the VPs are all together, vulnerable prisoners. The Bacons are all kept on the same wing. But remember, they are, by nature, predators. They prey on women, kids, on people weaker than them, and that's the offences that they've committed to land inside of there. He can't defend himself. So a lot of these VPs, Bacons, will be acting out justice on him. They will be taxing him. They'll be taking his canteen. They will be taking him for a ride inside a prison. They will be giving him the slap around the head because he can't defend himself. And then he will come across somebody who does not agree with the crimes he's in for, because most of these murders inside of high security prisons that take place or VP on VP, bacon on bacon, predator against predator, VP against VP. And someone will take justice out on Kyle Clifford for what he is in prison for. Because not only murdering 3 defenseless, beautiful women, he raped his dying partner before he'd done that. And the reason why he took it to trial, because he was trying to say it wasn't that. He said he had consensual with her a month previously, and that is why the DNA was there. How absolutely fucking ludicrous. But he has got what he deserved. He has got his karma. Karma in the most delightful way, shall we say, because like I've just said, spending the rest of your life inside a prison is a torture in itself. But spending the rest of life in prison, not being able to defend yourself, being paralyzed from the chest down, not being able to go out and have a walk around the exercise yard, he is living in absolute hell. And it is just what he deserves. But I'm going to leave that one there for now, people. But I am going to be doing more stories on the UK's most depraved prisoners and the ones that are serving life without parole. So do let us know in the comment section, people, if this is the type of content you like. And remember to comment, like, and subscribe. But also, please go down and check that you are subscribed to the channel, because it's staggering. 70% of my viewers are still not subscribed to the channel. So go down, double check. It doesn't cost a penny to subscribe to the channel. It's for free. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss another video. And you will see all my future uploads. And it does help the channel. So thank you very much for watching, people. Stay tuned for more videos. Enjoy the rest of your day. But most importantly, stay safe.